So last week we ended with telling stories about the Internet of Education. And I think the thing that I took away from that is that there isn't going to be one great story that explains the Internet of Education, I don't think. I think it's looks more like lots of people telling the story of the Internet of Education in their own way. And it's the telling that changes the way that each of us thinks about it. That's what I experienced. And what I experienced, hi Dan, what I experienced at the breakout session we did last week on this is that almost everyone in the breakout session I was at picked someone, often, if they have a child, their own child, and they talked about the constraints of the current education system and what they saw as the new possibility that the Internet of Education would provide for their child. So I think what we're going to do today, Chris, right, we're going to start out with kind of the soft launch of Internet of Education, or getting feedback from this community about the website and the app, and then use it to begin practice storytelling. And we're going to work out, are we capturing video? Are we capturing written? Kind of what's the way that we get, viral spread of these 10 principles to 1 million people across the planet, and then having 1 million people also begin to tell a story about how they see this new Internet of Education impacting learners that they care about. So Chris, do you want to kind of give a tour of
Sure.
the site and the app and your thoughts about how we can make this global movement launch?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Yeah, so website. Yeah, so some of you may have seen an early link of this. We had some of this stuff hidden, but so I'm going to show you some stuff, but I'm also going to give you some context as we go. So internetofeducation.org is a new website. Again, we all know this is not an organization. This is just a movement more than anything, probably. And this attempts to outline that in a very neutral way. And so the homepage, internetofeducation.org, what you'll see here is kind of a link in to the IoE hub. There's an app version, and you can view it online. It gives a little bit of information about the preamble, kind of like, this isn't an organization, this is a movement. It's a community. It links into the guiding principles. It's a place to get updates. And then you have the guiding principles here, right? And again, this is an early version. These principles are not final. And this is kind of opening up the forum, if you will, for discussion. So, there's only an open internet, open standards, self-sovereignty and access control, data dignity, weak center, equity, open participation, diversity and inclusion, effectiveness, and proportional influence. Each one of these you can link in. You can also link in here to start a conversation about it, which I'll go to in a minute. That links into the hub, kind of a space to get notified. We're about to launch kind of a pre-signatory here on the 8th. So that will go live then. That's a place to kind of say, hey, like, I agree with these principles, or at least in principle, I agree with these principles, and let's start having a conversation about them for a more official signatory in November, when we, propose our first major governance pieces and frameworks. And again, and this is just another link, just the same, to kind of link in and start the debate. And so the app, right, is very much, it's a resource hub, which I'm going to link into. Again, there's an Android version, an Apple version, and a web app version. Essentially, though, that's the website. The last piece of this is kind of about the road, right? So, checkpoint 1, we launched this resource hub. We put out the version 0.01 principles that we've all been talking about over the past year. We started debate, which I'll show you in a minute about those, and only an organizing committee. We're not officially a board. There's no official governance. There's no organization yet. Checkpoint 2 in November, we actually, we take all the debate and we come into consensus around that with some voting mechanisms and, come into an official signatory. That's when we want having official proposals on governance. And again, and some of this is still iterative. Everything is iterative, actually, which is what we want to invite all of you specifically. And we're also inviting learning economies, steering, and a few of our close allies to come and help us with this. But the idea would be that in November, we do an official signatory, we put some proposals in for governance in an early version, and we open up debate for governance. And then in early next year, we're ready to go, and we can launch this governance, and we can move into 2021 ready to start taking this to the next level. So that's the website of that, but I want to go ahead and link in as well and show you what happens if you go ahead and link into this. You'll recognize it. It's a similar frame as the T3 Learning and Employment Records Hub that we developed for them, but it just has some different types of information, right? So you have kind of about the Internet of Education. You can come in here and kind of see what some of this is. You can link into the principles and ecosystem, different types of things. We have a place to kind of introduce yourself and to start sharing content. It's also a really great community space where, you can have the app and it has communications and kind of a localized content network, if you will, so we can share news and updates and things we're working on, et cetera. Everyone will get notified and be able to come in and comment on it and be involved in a community. So we're hoping not only that this will be a resource hub, but can start to actually act as a source for asynchronous communication and community as well. It's a place to introduce yourself. And then basically it's separated into a couple of different hubs. You have kind of a community hub, a systems hub, and kind of a Senate, if you will. But I'll click into each one of these really quickly. The community hub really has, a couple of different sections. It's got community content, which I was just telling you about. It's got a space for all the different initiatives, the collabs, the members, the networks, the work groups, and then we can link off to the systems. The community content really, again, is just a place to put in content. So, we can put, whatever kind of content you want, and we can share that. The initiatives, we've started to organize some of what's there already in the document that Greg has been working on. These need work, and I will say this is probably the spot that needs the most work. If you click into these, you'll see there's a bit of a librarian note, help us actually add key resources. And you can do that here by just posting resources right into it if you'd like. You can also leave comments. We've turned comments on until the 8th on all of these, that you can come in and post your ideas and your thoughts on this, and that can help us kind of understand what resources we need to describe some of these things. You've got the IEEE. We want to basically, the idea is to tell the story of each of these, right? So, charters, action plans, videos, one sheets, anything that can help us tell the story in a really nice way. So we've built an index here of some of the main ones, but we really need your help to get the resources. We have collabs, which, really represent, some of the different, Broward, ASU, Asia Pacific, Colorado, North Dakota, et cetera. You can propose and toss other ones in here using this up here at the top if you'd like, add the title of it here, add the information about it here. Or you can also leave comments if you see that there are resources that need to be added, any key resources, just add those in, and we're going to be monitoring the comments until the 8th to help us with iterations. There's a place to introduce yourself. I introduced myself already. You've got networks, which kind of represent, all these different networks, which are doing interesting things. Again, it'd be a great place to add comments. You can see how this may look. We have a little bit more about T3 here. So they have a video and we can link off to their hub. But we want to tell each of the stories for each of these in the same way. So help us with content if you represent any of these networks or are experts in them. We started to organize some of the work groups. So you can kind of see where those work groups are and when they meet. For instance, you've got the C-Lab Pulse. Here's the meeting link. Here's the time for the meeting, running agenda. if there are other ones, again, propose them here. What we really want to have is a space where we can, just start to understand all the edges and of these things. I talk to people all the time about different, things that are happening, and you say, hey, are you in the W3C work group? And they're like, what is that? So this is hopefully a place where we can all put our finger on the pulse of everything that's happening. So if we've missed it, you can add a new work group here. And if you see something that, and if you know about one of these really well and you have information, you can leave that in the comments. So let me go back really quick and I'll show you the other side of it, which is the systems. And so in the systems side, we have gone through and kind of organized, a few different things here. You have the IoE ecosystem, which is really kind of telling the story. We kind of see this as having 6 key utilities. And there's a deck about that here that you can get. And, we've kind of told the story here with images. But obviously, we're always continuing to iterate. So if you have thoughts, add those comments. We have shared utilities, and this is one section that needs more work. Everything. So the only thing we have right now really is this Trust collab that Greg and others have been working on, and we're starting to outline some of the information in here, so you can see it. But I'm sure there are others. We need to know what those are. You've got dev resources. I think this could use some more help as well. There's a few different things in here, but I would love to have an index of all of the different important repositories and such. So please, post some of those. You have open standards, which we could obviously do a whole lot more with this, but a lot of these are built around the IEEE work. But and maybe we could link into LER's data standards hub there as well, because they've already done so much great work. So we can expand that. And then you have the key concepts. So it's just like all of the different definitions. And if you see something missing, let us know. And finally, we have the principles debate. And so in this particular section, what we've done is, each one of these principles, they link into their individual card. And the idea is, here's each one, there's some comment section here. Let's have conversations about it. The last update is here, so we can see kind of the progress. And we want to just encourage debate and participation and keep spreading this around. And hopefully this website will continue to drive people in here to have conversations about that. And, we have, this like Senate dashboard is, it's kind of the beginning of this. We can start to debate governance, in November. And this could also become a place for us to nominate, principals and boards and whatever needs to happen. So we have some voting technology that will be inserted into this as well. So we can actually have voting in addition to debate. So lots of cool stuff on the horizon. There's also, a space for a group chat, just kind of like a universal chat that everybody automatically gets added to, kind of like a Discord. But for the Internet of Education, it can also, you can create group chats out of it. So it's very much like, WhatsApp, Discord, whatever it may be. And in the future, we can start to actually create more groups. So there's actually a ton of stuff we can do, and, generators for pilots and communications, and each of, our C-Lab and Broward and others will each receive kind of a collab version of this, where they can start to have their own kind of like private LinkedIn for their own collabs to organize communications and such. So all of that can be built on this network. And again, it's available in the App Store now, but we're doing a few more final iterations on it to make it a little bit better. And we want to iterate the content and resources before it goes live. So I think that's a 101 on all things IoE Hub.
Anyone want to jump in? Comments? I mean,
so Chris, some of this reminds me of a site I made called Curriki, where we've created communities of curriculum developers and allowed them to build curriculum collections and have communities together. There were a number of challenges to make it work. First is getting the right people in and active in the right ways. The second was avoiding spam and noise and filibustering and a few other kinds of bad behaviors. Is there going to be some curation and moderation involved?
It's a good question. So there are many ways to do this, right? There isn't any right and wrong. So I want to say, you're kind of asking me, and I'm talking head giving you the answers, but I'm not the king of this, right? This is ours. This is a community resource that we all share. So everyone on this call and beyond, are part owners in this, if you will. So I'm open to everyone's thoughts on how we approach this, but we do have, but to give you, my personal vote on how this may work, the thought was to leave the comments available and kind of all of the submissions available in each of the chapters where people can just toss stuff in, to leave that available until or leave that open until August 8th, in which or is that right? Or September 8th, to when we actually put this out officially and send out a big announcement about it and have our networks put announcements out. At that time, we'll pull the comments off on some of the places at least, and we'll pull all of the the submission of resources off so that there's only a curated space to submit resources from then on, which you can see on the homepage. And so people can submit to a curated space, and then we can decide what goes in. That's how we're doing it at T3, and it seems to be very effective. But in terms of having places for people to have conversations, though, we're not looking to do quite a bit of moderating. The thought is that this is a professional group, and people that are going to be involved are going to be professionals. But we certainly have administrators who can moderate, and and there are flags and such. So if something is flagged 2 or 3 times, it gets pulled down and goes into a queue. So there are mechanisms in place for it, but we kind of want to trust that the community is going to be professional. But I'm open to everybody's thoughts on those types of things. And I'll also say that quality is important. So it's not about just like an open call for anything, but this is such a professional group, which is why we're making it available to you first, and then to our steering and some of our close allies to come in first and kind of go through and say what needs to change. Like, is this right? What do we need to add? What are the right resources, et cetera, so that we can have kind of a first collective run with our professionals, and then we'll close that down and have submissions from there, just to make sure we maintain quality control. At least that's how we're thinking about doing it. But again, this is the group who can make those decisions.
So Chris, I saw the website before, but this is my first seeing the hub, and I like it. I think it's it has a lot of real strengths. It's I have a little bit of cognitive dissonance in the categorization of initiatives and systems, and kind of the way that it's organized doesn't quite fit with the way that I think about things. So I don't know what's the best way to kind of go about that and how do we arrive at, is this, is it, I mean, it's obviously this is much more than Learning Economy Foundation, PCG, or whatever. It's all of us, right? So how do we kind of arrive at these consensus decisions about organizing and et cetera? I think, do you want feedback on terms, I'm not even sure exactly where I would put feedback in terms of the overall overarching organizing schemas?
What we should probably do, let me actually do something real quick. Let me share my screen once more. So first of all, let me say Duncan, who's on the call, is a bit of a master of ceremonies when it comes to this. He has been kind of pivotal in helping us organize this. Actually, I'm going to open this up from a different angle. And what we should probably do is take the community content, and let's change that over right now to kind of a Q&A, or like a discussion about the various pieces. And so, so it's going to take me a little longer than I thought. But for those of you who get in, there is a call right here that says, "What are you reading or watching?" I'm going to change this for now to, or at least add another one here that lets you just submit open thoughts. We can, that'll go into the newsfeed, and everyone can kind of have conversations about those. So that's one way to start submitting thoughts. But again, I'm open to whatever. We organized it based on our best ability to think of this very broad set of things. But yeah, we're open to any and all thoughts. So you can send them here, you can send us email, you can reach out to Duncan, you can use the chat in the app. There's a group chat that already connects with us right there. You can leave comments on different sections. You can create a new Google Doc and send us a whole new idea with a new structure. Like really what, the sky's the limit.
Well, I mean, Duncan, do you want to talk about what your thinking was? And where, I mean, like systems versus initiatives, ecosystem, members, community content, to me, these are, there's this concept of MISI, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, right? When you're making a taxonomy, how you put things into buckets and then smaller buckets and smaller buckets, but you try to make them that they don't overlap. To me, this organizing scheme has a lot of overlapping, what's a system, what's a network, what's a community, what's an initiative.
You have a different word. I think it has less to do, because I will say this, here, let me share again, because I think these things are very different. None of these things have crossover. Maybe just the word in your mind does, right? So I just actually changed it to systems last night. I think originally it was something different. What was it, Duncan?
I think it was mechanics.
It was mechanics. Yeah, we were trying to think. Basically what we did though, the idea here was that the community section, these are all community related things. You've got content, you've got the initiatives, you've got the collabs, the members that are participants, the networks, and the work groups. These are all community related things, right?
But how are networks different from collabs? Is Broward a network or a collab? Is North Dakota a collab or a network? They're both. The collabs create networks. So that's where I start to get really confused about the organizing scheme.
Well, yeah, I mean, a network is a network of, I think there is some crossover there, but they are different. I mean, a network isn't a collab, but a collab is a network. So they are different, right?
Yeah, and I think the term collab has, at least on our end, kind of got this connotation of something more, I don't know, like Ed 3.0, Internet of Education associated and kind of incubated, whereas networks are, it seems a little broader than collabs, but.
Yeah, networks are just networks of, education, networks in this industry, right? Who are doing various things in this industry, like WorkCred and, Velocity Network are networks. The learning economy is a network, right? But collabs are very specifically the work that's being done in specific places, implementation work that's happening.
But if that's confusing, then.
And another thing we have is we have a new section that we can put above this, and we can put definitions of each of these too at the top. Like, what is a network? What is a collab? What is an initiative? We could do this at the top of each one, if that helps.
Are collabs nodes in one of the networks?
Essentially will be. We're talking about the future and the day now. These collabs are mostly social engineering at this point, right? Most of these are not actual, full implementations yet. So, but essentially they would be, but they'd all be nodes on the Internet of Education, even more so, right? The idea is that we want all the networks to interoperate. So they wouldn't, in a perfect world, they would be nodes on all of them. But I will show you this too. And the reason we did systems as different than community, there's only those two things, right? And the systems has to do with the tech stuff, architectures, utilities, resources. But yeah, we're definitely open to thoughts. But yeah, we can definitely, to your point, Dan, we can definitely, I think one thing right away that we could do to help create any, to get rid of any confusion is every one of the sections, we could put a short, 1 or 2 sentence description at the top that explains what you'll find in this section. So like a context at the top. And that should at least help to identify the differences.
So Chris, thank you so much. And I'm going to have to jump off for just a minute. I'm going to try and come back before we wrap up here, but just something on the visuals, something that I know to be true and is in fact perceivable in the content I have been able to look at so far, but does not show up at the front page of the web page, is the global scope of the Internet of Education. It could be perceived as something either regional or national, And in the images, I think it might be important to truly send an internationalist signal through the graphics. And I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but there is a way that somebody might think of this as smaller than it in fact is. The rhetoric says it, the words, but in the images, I think it might be important to use one of the globe images that are undergirding this.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, we could certainly think about that. And then there is more of a global story we could tell too. We weren't specifically thinking about that as being an important theme, but yeah,
you don't want it to be an add-on later, right? It's baked into the DNA. So
yeah, it could certainly be done.
This is a job for a video in the front door.
Yeah, no, that could definitely be done. We could add I mean, we could even just on the front page, just, you know, just off my head here, on the front page, we could add a section specifically about its international, about how it's international, include, you know, some of those pieces. And so, yeah, we could do a call out just to be very explicit about it. I think it's a good idea.
I think Dan's point is no clicks, right? It's got to be right there in your face first thing.
yeah, I mean, it's truly global in the sense that no one is excluded, anyone can connect, and any points,
Yeah.
any learner should be able to connect to any resource and be able to engage in this work.
I think also related to that is potentially putting a tableau map of the location of people in the node, in this discussion, for example. So if I have a map of the globe there, I could say North America, this is where Greg is located, you know, and this is where Simone is located in a global map of Tableau, the, you know, the software.
Good idea. It's a great idea. That'd be a good way to do the section. Yeah, we could put like a map with pins for all the different places it's represented, and we could have kind of a, like a, you know, claim your flag kind of a thing where people can say, hey, I'm in a different location. I really like that.
Great idea.
I also think that, you know, as we add content to the hub, international content, that will be the evidence supporting that claim right up front. So it's also important that we have substantial content that speaks to the fact that this is a global initiative. In terms of visual and so on, I wanted to share just a quick thing. It is sort of a visual that comes out of the research. Can you see my screen?
Coming.
Hold on. No, wait. This is not it. Let me see. This one, right? Can you see the map?
Yep.
Yeah. So this was work done to support the Canadian National Network project, and it's mapping the existing data exchange services or repositories. You know, it's probably partial, but it was. You know, maybe this could turn into networks. I mean, if we do the proper research or tagging of what they are tagged in some ways if you see it here, but you know, that's something that, you know, along the lines that I was thinking. And this comes from the Groningen Declaration Network website, and just sharing. There you go.
Well, feels like we're a little low energy this morning. Not exactly sure why.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, my whole computer just shut down on me, and I was in the middle of having to I was like going back and forth with my phone. But I think that's a great idea. Could you send us that map? Could you send a, I'd love to look at that. And I think that's a great idea. So what we'll do is we'll add a section. Let me share my screen again. So at a bare minimum, we'll add a section, maybe right here up top, maybe like right here, maybe like right here or something in this area. And we could put a map, and we could put, kind of like show where we are and have different pins on it. Yeah, I think so. That's really interesting. We can kind of have a conversation in that section about how it's global and available. So that's one iteration we'll do. Any other thoughts? And and again, we'll send this all out to you in email, so you'll have access to the apps and the different pieces. And also, I've already put the email together. It's going to give you steps on what we need from you. You can come in and leave comments on this, do this, and etc. But we would very much appreciate if you just get an afternoon or an hour here and there between the 8th and now to go in and just kind of look at all the different resources, and if there is a space you're an expert in that we haven't covered right, or if you have resources, if you run one of these initiatives and you have the resources just to post links, again, you can, the process is really simple. You just go to the comments, you post the links, you post, any additional information, and we'll get that iterated. So I really would appreciate your help.
Chris, are the pages of this shareable between the T3 hub and this?
Yeah, they are.
So like if there's a IEEE ILR page, then that can be both in the T3 hub as well
That's
as the
correct.
Internet.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
And how do we do that, right? So
if you'll just let us know, yeah, we just, so Duncan can help. I can help as well. It's a fairly simple thing for us to do. We just need to know what you want us to do. So we'll have so what you'll see, so I'm going to send an email out to everybody, which will officially say, hey, we're ready, right? This is a preview I showed you, but we're doing kind of one final push to the build here in just a short kind of half hour or so. I'll send everybody an email. It'll give you everything you need to get in. And when you get in, you'll see a place right up top that basically says, it's kind of an open space for submitting feedback and questions and, et cetera. And so yeah, if there are things like that, just let us know. So I'm not sure how to do it other than that.
in terms of, that's okay.
I was going to say, we can either link into the LER hub, right? That's one thing that can happen, which is just, we can have a tile that it goes to a certain section. But if there are resources on the LER hub that just need to be redundant, and in the sense that it needs to be stored here as well in certain specific areas, it's an easy thing to do. We can just like sync that up and send that over. So we certainly can. We just need the directions on what your thoughts are.
So to link it back to last week, so we talked about also, telling personal stories about the Internet of Education, where you talk about a particular learner or, and you talk about the challenges that they're facing and then what the Internet of Education could offer to them. Where do you see that residing?
A good question. Yeah, as I forgot about that actually, but that is, we'll put that in here as well. So that'll be a section right there at the top. So basically when you first get into the app, there's a space where it's a call for content and crowdsourcing and information. We'll put it right there. And that actually reminds me, there's a whole section of the website that is hidden that I forgot to unhide that has the links into that. So I'll get that up.
I don't know if this, the one thing I might add real quick too, just that I've been sort of toying with in other writing projects and things is just I think part of this platform and the sort of social library versus kind of the existing platforms that we're used to interacting with. I think that's also part of the challenge is to, have some of this be a way to break free from, and this is bringing in some of my own opinion, but that the sort of broader, digital information ecology is fairly broken right now across all the major, Facebook, Twitter, all the major social networks. So I think that's part of our collective work is to find ways to like break our mental habits that have us tied in tightly to these, existing social algorithms that I think are part of some of the things we're trying to kind of fight back against with some of this work. So anyway, it's, in many ways it doesn't function just like we're all expecting because of the major platforms we've all gotten really used to. But I think the more I work here, the more I'm like, it's a relief in some ways, to know that there aren't, whether it's advertising, driving, certain content or whatever it might be. So anyway, something to reflect on, but I think that's part of the goal here too, is to actually have it be intentionally different. And that'll just take some work to sort of break certain mental habits.
And yeah, I agree. And to your point, Greg, I forgot these sections were off. I just turned them back on. So we also have this get involved section. So pledge your commitment, join the debate, tell your story, and access the resource hub. So, and then there's another one here that's explaining what's happening and where we're going next. So it's this tell your story section right here. We'll link them right in to tell their story and to let them read other stories and have conversations about that.
So Simone and Colin and I met earlier today, and there's, clearly there's a lot of intentional, in my mind, overlap, perhaps even 100% overlap between IEEE ILR recommended practices and IoE. What I think we're recommending for ILR, and there's been some discussion about this, and Simone, you were going to come back and also to talk a little bit about this, is explicitly recommended practices for developing an ecosystem. So Tracy, Dan, Jeff, those of you who kind of stand for ecosystems, Matt, what are all the different things that you need to put together for a Internet of Education, ILR ecosystem to function in your jurisdiction? How do you deal with trust? How do you deal with ontologies? How do you deal with verifiability? All of the different aspects of this vision that I think we all collectively have. So Simone, I think the other thing, do you want to just talk about, you said you'd come back to kind of with some thoughts about, how we scope, how we deal with input, how do we make, what's your thoughts?
That I see clearly the ILR work. Sometimes initially I went back to say, isn't it the same thing, right? I mean, in terms of scope, it is. Then we were able to decouple. So what the Internet of Education is, and that's the vision toward which I think the ILR is a building block, right? Does part, maybe recommends practices on how to connect the dots, to create the ecosystem. As I'm saying this has to crystallize, honestly, like in what will ultimately be delivered by the work stream within IEEE. But certainly when we look at ILR, that learner records are part of the Internet of Education, right? And in the way we have conceptualized it now, open for discussion, it's starting the ILR work is there's learner records, but there's also the registry of issuers. There's also an element around, I guess, ontologies. So it's more than the learner records. And maybe I was wondering if the question of scope for me came, I said, are we doing too much? I mean, is ILR going beyond what its scope should be, or that for people that engage to understand, the Internet of Education is a vision that we are across and we're familiar with. And I think if you understand it, then you buy into it. At least I do, and most of us do. But then to make this accessible and inclusive, that in the ILR, is it too much? Too big of a bite to take for someone that just joins and that is not part of the journey so far? And then do we run the risk that people engage, see that it's a big thing, they don't get it, and then they disengage right away? So I did pose a question to the community in the last call is double checking on the scope. And I think the feedback was, yes, the scope is fine as it is. So maybe big scope, almost as big as the Internet of Education scope, right? But I had picked up on some feedback that was pointing to say, hey, maybe you should narrow it down because it's too much. I don't understand what this is about. I'm interested in if you guys had any similar thought thinking about ILR and Internet of Education and the likes.
Jeff, do you have, look like you're positioning to say something?
Um, the thing is that if you don't have your big idea out there, it's hard to build the pieces. You know, to me, it's like we're early architects of this whole thing. So if we don't have the vision of what the building's going to look like, it's hard to put in the components.
Yeah.
Now, other people are going to have different comfort levels. So I'm thinking, you know, we've got this big plan, but there may be pages that we can break it into. So if somebody's really just looking at how is the learner record going to work on a global market, you know, that's just one little page they can look at of the pile of drawings that we're building. And then we can put those components in there. One of our things, you know, I keep thinking of this as like that big playbook that every sport has. You know, there's components that you put in there. I don't need to, if I'm on the team, I don't need to learn the whole playbook. I just need to learn what my part is on the team. As I want to learn more, I can always learn more. So I think I like the having that big vision now, and then we can start looking at the smaller components. I mean, this is kind of like, you got to build something before they get there, and you kind of got to give them that vision of what it is. So I understand the little chunks, but think of it as a circus. You know, everybody likes to go to the circus. Not everybody's looking at the same arena at the same time. So you just have to build it that way. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, and to Chris's credit, which I think this is where my thinking was going as you were talking, which is we've used this idea of there is this blue sky that we're all sort of aligning towards, and I think up until now it's been a pretty theoretical sort of idea that, you know, is just loosely floating in different people's heads. This was like, let's put this out in a way that's tangible, and then, you know, what are the rungs of the ladder to climb up to that blue sky? And I think, you know, exactly what you said is right. Those pieces and parts, those rungs of that ladder are, you know, some are getting mature, some are, you know, nearly complete, but there are some rungs that are absolutely absent and need to be built entirely. So yeah, I think the thought is that now we've at least got a single vision to point to. Here is the blue sky, you know, and now collectively, you know, how do we get back in our own lanes, knowing that, you know, taking on the entirety of it is a lot to expect of anybody. But anyway, yeah, that was at least the way I've sort of thought about it. It's at least a point now we can, you know, to have a single URL to point people towards that isn't, you know, just us sort of running through decks or trying to talk about things that are fairly abstract for a lot of people. That's step one.
Right. Just bouncing off that, it's, you know, once we've created this overarching image of the house, then it really gets into explaining how those different bricks are necessary to build said house. Right. And a lot of people will only understand one or two bricks. I mean, this is something that like IMS does relatively well in the way that they break out the individual specs based on what they're focusing on, et cetera. There's going to be a similar need here for the internet of education, because a lot of places are only going to be able to deal with a small bit of it at a time. But as long as we can show them a picture of what we're thinking and where it's all going, I think we'll be okay.
Well, Tracy, Marty, and Joshua, you guys, you know, are at the forefront of, I think, bringing it together at a statewide level. And, you know, I'm hoping that part of that soon you'll be able to share now the broader group, the North Dakota architecture, and then to really invite in participation about, you know, both in terms of, Tracy, what you end up doing in North Dakota to make sure you have the most input, and then also whether that can become, you know, is what you're going to do in North Dakota, is that the model that Jeff should follow in Michigan, right? And where are there alternatives, you know, that Jeff needs to consider, and where, you know, where is the consensus of, you know, of one path, right?
I'd agree.
Can I pose another question here? Sorry, Joshua, go ahead.
I'll just add one quick note to that. You know, in North Dakota, we're focusing on the low-hanging fruit of the high school transcript. It seems like the natural place to start. It is a well-defined structure, and we can transition legacy formats to this new format. So I think it's a perfect starting point to work at the high school transcript use case. And what we're building as open source should be deployable by any state or district that issues high school transcripts.
Could I add to that? Because I know that this is one of those areas that I'm sure other states are interested in, and I'm looking to our international players, is that in Michigan, we do try to recognize other countries' transcripts. And so when we get into this area, in Michigan, we and other states will honor the ability to be bilingual, but we need that transcript from another country to be able to prove that they have that ability. So when we're looking at this, you know, Internet of Education, that ILR, if we have that type of system, it makes it very easy for us to verify and do that. So there is a need out there, and the need does stretch, I guess, beyond our US borders, because I'm looking for an ability to get a transcript from a different country to be able to verify the proficiency that person has when they come to the United States, especially around language.
I'm very interested in understanding how the CLR is going to start to bridge countries and the interpretation of a transcript. It's one of my biggest concerns right now, is really globally understanding how that CLR is going to adapt across, borders.
There's some interesting work going on with the Distributed Identity Foundation and their interoperability work group, which I think is noted on here. But I agree with you, Tracy. It's kind of interesting to think about the CLR and then the CLR consumption and the CLR presentation. And so, so there's a lot of work going on from a interoperability standpoint, trying to understand and relate to that. But to your point, Greg, I think it's a reference implementation, and that's why we're trying to be very open with the partners and where we publish data to. So I think that's an important kind of context for all of this, is to say, we're trying to give a broad spectrum of understanding of what we're delivering to the end user through many, many different partners. I think it'll be, the learning will be interesting as we kind of continue on, but trying to keep very broad spectrum of consumers is important as a reference implementation.
Is there an integration,
Martin,
what's the integration with the current systems in the school districts and the school systems? So at Bigger Bang University, we have high school transcript data that we can give to the districts and to the students themselves as well. We offer continuing education classes in that regard. So I'm just also curious, I don't know where to look to, I guess, where the integration and what systems you integrate to be able to generate this CLR from those systems, or if it's just a manual process that they install and translate over.
So there's right now in North Dakota is developing internally the CLR generation function within their e-transcripts platform, but there definitely will be, I think, a CLR mapping need from a consuming side.
Yeah, so let me add to that. I mean, that requires some analysis, right? And it, to do correctly would require defining your achievements in terms of case frameworks. So there is some information design required to be able to do that in an interoperable way. That is some lift, depending on what the organization currently has with regard to their definitions in their student information systems.
So the other initiative that's bubbling that we all should be aware of is the Open Skills Network. That's going to be, I think, I was just talking to Matt Gee earlier today, that could be a place, to bring together Case Network, ASN, MC. Brant, I think it's really important that, you and Stuart and Steve Midgley and folks, it doesn't seem like you guys are enough involved yet. Is that right? Brant, you've had that vision for sort of the meta registry of all these things. That seems like that's what Open Skills Network needs to really embrace.
Yeah. So let's see if I can put a little bit of context. I haven't been tracking it as closely as I'd like to, as they've been building the prototype from the specs. But I understand that they've been able to get more funding and expanded the scope, so that's a positive thing. But yeah, the prototype is involving the competency registries themselves that they're building, and I think we're going to be hearing a lot about that fairly soon as they get close to completion of the prototype work. But yeah, this does need to get integrated into what we have here. I agree. It hasn't been as involved yet. I think it'll make sense to try and discuss that. I'm going to write to them. I've been meaning to do this anyway, and find out how the prototype is going. I think it's going well because they haven't had to ask me very many questions, if that makes sense. But I'll follow up on that, and then we need to agree. We need to figure out how to fit that into all of this, because it would make sense if there's actually a built-in service where you could actually go look up competencies and not just refer to the fact that such a thing is possible.
So there's two issues that I think are not going to have a consensus of one approach. There may be others, but I'm aware of two. How trust is managed, either through a member directory, a registry, or through a even more distributed approach. And then this 3-object structure versus 2-object structure that several of us spent a couple of years going around in circles on. And I feel like we went around in circles on it enough, for me to feel like the answer is we're not going to ever pick one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you were starting to get to, Brant. I don't know whether you really how far you were able to get, but this way of saying, look, some people are going to be doing this 3-object structure Case. Some people are going to be doing this 2-object structure ASN. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then there needs to be a way to search and reference and work between them. Same thing for some people are going to do distributed identity foundation. Some people are going to do trust over IP. And I think from an ILR standpoint, that's another place where we say both are acceptable alternatives. And if we can get to a consensus of saying the consensus is not 3 versus 2, the consensus is either 3 or 2. And here's how they relate together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that is definitely the direction that the T3 project is going, the PP 5.2 is going, is not trying to argue one or the other, but instead let each registry produce it in their native format, and then the consumers can take it as it is.
So this part, we've done a lot in this area. So I feel like we're closer to an actual technical solution that, what you've been doing, Brant, and then all the 5 years of work in Case and all the work before that in ASN and things, takes us to the point where this is ready to get physically built. I'm personally a little less clear about exactly how distributed identity foundation versus trust over IP coexist in an ecosystem, what's necessary to have touch points between those two. But that's the other one that I think we need to really work on resolving. So we got 4 minutes left.
I also had a comment around it.
Please,
Greg. Sorry, just picking up on what Marty was saying happening within DIF around interoperability, and there was a thread around saying in standards. I mean, the first one in the market becomes the de facto standard, right? And so, an emerging practice becomes a recommended practice right off the bat, if there is, in absence of, competing solutions. So in the beginning, that's what's happening. So one question that I had around, the work that we're doing in the ILR is, I mean, right now we have we are aware of some practices around an ILR or supporting the vision of an Internet of Education, which are emergent, Broward, Dakota, North Dakota, and so on. Are we comfortable in saying those are recommended practices? They are in the build, but are they at the maturity level where we can call them recommended practice, or are we just taking whatever it's there right now, a snapshot, and say these are the recommended practice? I mean, what do you think about that?
Maybe it evolves. I mean, maybe we're making early recommendations now, and then as we get more experience together, the recommendations continue to evolve, right?
Yeah, this is Phil. I don't see how you can do a recommended practice in the absence of data. So I'm confident that what gets done at Broward and what gets done at North Dakota is going to be valuable and interesting, and hopefully it will be quickly able to become a recommended practice. But I think it actually has to exist and have some minimal engagement with the community it's serving before you can get to that point. Highlighting it as a direction, sure.
Totally.
Thank you.
Jim Goodell, next. Are you still there, Jim? Who's Jim?
I think so.
Okay. Jim, I think, is going to be moving the CMALTS meeting from next Thursday to Friday. I believe Jerry is not able to make this time, so there may be a change in schedule for that, but I think we'll keep with this. I think maybe we can use this meeting next week as a time maybe to, Simone, I don't know whether this is where we could vet some of the comments that came in on the ILR public domain document, and maybe reach out specifically also to the people who put comments in to, really encourage them to attend, or at least know that we're working on their comments.
Nice, yeah.
And then just one other thing for future meetings is September 17th, which will be the third Thursday in September. I've invited Michael Horn, who is a pretty noted author of Blended and Disrupting Class and Choosing College and other things, and a man named Howard Bloomberg, who was the producer of PBS's Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And both of them are very interested in pandemic pods. And so that I think will be a really interesting conversation to think about, both kind of from a childcare standpoint, what are the roles that government plays or doesn't play in terms of how to provide supervision for young learners who have parents who are essential workers, and then how do we have study pods in the way that Dan Gohl and SOG Education's looking for in terms of having more intensive tutoring support. Okay, and we're out of time, so we'll see you all next week at this time, if not sooner.
Cool beans.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.
Cheers.